this is Howard Street, and this is one of North Shields' grandest streets. And this was maybe laid out around almost 1820s. So there's maps from 1820s, and you can see something starting to form here, basically. And that's about 50 years after Dockery Square was built. So this is one of North Shields' big, long, fine streets, Howard Street. It's had a lot of money spent on it by the council. They've really renovated it. And down the bottom there, you have the Stagline building, which was, you know, I mentioned before that the ship owners of Dockery Square, they had the prime spot there. But the real prime spot was taken by that Stagline building at the very bottom, because the Stagline was one of North Shields' most famous shipping lines. And there's a big image of a stag on the side of the building that could be seen from way off. And you know, that logo actually should be a lot brighter, and it should be painted, because that's a really important symbol of North Shields, that is. But this street's got a lot of interesting features on it. I mean, John Dobson was the finest architect of his time, and he was from North Shields, he was from Churton. He built a lot of the buildings and the churches on this street. So John Dobson built stuff on this street. A lot of his early work is on this street, but also Benjamin Green, who was almost the kind of Duke's architect, the Duke of Northumberland's architect. Dobson was pretty much Granger's architect in Newcastle. But one of the buildings that John Dobson built was this Baptist church here. And this street's got a kind of interesting story, because Mary Macham was a slave girl who was born in 1802 in Virginia, and she was sold into slavery at the age of 12, and she managed to escape to North Shields from America. She was the only slave woman who made it to Britain, who escaped to Britain, and she lived on this street, and she was baptized in that church. And that church was also, it also hosted Frederick Douglass. And Frederick Douglass was a great emancipation and abolitionist. He was a teacher, an intellectual. He was a great politician and all this, and he was a great campaigner. And he did talks across the north of England in the 19th century, Frederick Douglass, and he did one of these talks here. So he would have met Mary Macham. Now Mary Ann she hasn't got a plaque to her, she hasn't got a blue plaque or anything like that. She lived on this street, she lived at number 40 and she lived at 44 as well. And she married a local man called James Blythe, who was a rope maker. And she lived until about 1893. She was 19, she was 91 when she died. And recently a group of people spearheaded by the old Lowlight Heritage group, they bought a headstone for her in Preston Cemetery. So that's Mary Macham. She arrived in this country on Christmas Day 1831. She managed to stow away on a boat and arrive at North Shields. So she's one of the residents of this street that really nobody really knows about. Like I say, there's no real blue plaque. So that's an interesting thing. So this is Howard Street. It's what, like I say, it goes up to, you know, North Shields' second great square is Northumberland Square at the top of the street. And we've just looked at Dockery Square around the corner. So these two squares formed what's called like the new town of North Shields. And so as North Shields started to grow and start to develop, and the railway came in 1847, the railway came to North Shields, they had this big expansion of the new town, and a lot of the money and a lot of the people moved up this way from the river. And it's funny now that in some ways much of Upper Town North Shields is kind of a little bit decayed, and there's not a lot happening here. It's not that vibrant, and it seems like the Fish Quay is the vibrant place, and that's the gentrified place. So it's funny how these things go in cycles over time, and it's ironic, but this is still a lovely street. And like I say, there's a lot of great work gone into the street and a lot of money spent on it, making it look lovely today. So it's a real asset to the area.